active individuals can't even afford basic housing. Higher prices in these city centers where people, these citizens are actually supposed to live, means businesses push up prices to be higher than the land rate, meaning that as much as things like inflation, economic shocks happen and are basically symmetrical on both sides, the uncontrolled amount of tourism that happens on their side that simply exacerbates the issue, makes the quality of life for locals significantly harder. So getting into the key clash of this debate, the economic benefits of the tourists and the trade-off that we engage in. They say from their side of the house that there's simply a false equivalency of inflation being connected to the tourist industry. I sufficiently engage with that. But even secondly, that diversification can simply be done independently from tourism being slashed significantly. Here's what we say out of our side of the house. We already told you that inflation already exacerbates the existing economic inequality that happens not just in developed cities, but also in developing nations itself, such as Tanzania, such as Kenya, right? And even then, look at today, when Mexico City is so expensive for the locals, the Mexican peso cannot compete with this influx of U.S. citizens moving and actually using their purchasing power to drive up prices, drastically decreasing the quality of life for these locals that live there. We tell you that the government has an innate priority to prioritize the living quality of these citizens themselves instead of prioritizing the tourists as cash cows. Additionally, we tell you that there's an immediate need for diversification. We cannot wait and we cannot afford to simply just push it off, saying, hey, we could simply have tourists remaining as they are, coming uncontrolled, as well as diversified. We tell you that there's an immediate completion of extractive resources that tourism provides. We tell you that tourism is an extractive industry inherently. We tell you, no, not take it. We tell you how Hawaii specifically can only account for so many tourists before the before the coast basically erode, before there's nothing to even go to in the first place. We tell you that we must act now because these economic shocks that happen, things like COVID-19 or the recession in 2008, it immediately depletes the tourist industry, meaning that there's people that are not economically active. What does this mean on their side of the house? When these economically active individuals can't pay taxes to their government, there's no actual activity going on. This tells you that we need to remove reliance on the tourist industry and we need to do it now. Even then, we tell you that, for example, Arusha specifically doesn't have sufficient infrastructure. They don't have specific infrastructure or sanitation because all of the profits for the tourist industry is reinvested back in the tourist industry. This whole idea of trickle-down economics doesn't simply translate, especially in the developing countries, where one, there isn't a level of transparency of where the funds are going. This happens a lot in, for example, Indonesia or even Kenya, for example, where the funds that come from tourists, that foreign currency doesn't translate to the local. They're still living in slums. They're still not having that quality of life. They're not actually self-actualizing. What actually happens on their side of you have that continued priority on these tourists basically, because they're the ones who actually benefit the government the most. We tell you on our side of the house that even if there's a short-term shock and we implement this motion or we pass this motion, even if there's some layoffs in the immediate term, we tell you that we get long-term benefits for the three key stakeholders over the course of this debate. 1, locals, 2, tourists, and 3, states. We tell you one, not take it. We tell you one, that locals simply get better paying jobs in the long term. When we invest in economic diversification, when we significantly limit tourism, but also use the existing revenues of the tourist industry or other industries specifically, such as the quaternary industries, such as IT or investing in information technology, or investing in other aspects of the service industry, or the existing manufacturing industries that occur not only in Tanzania but also in Kenya, right? When we use that existing fund to actually invest in other industries, we allow locals in the long term to get better jobs and better quality of life for generations. In this current day and age, if we were not to allow this motion to pass, what happens is these people are stuck lacking social and economic mobility. They never become the hotel managers, only start being the maids, the cleaners, the people selling stuff in the side of the road. What we get from ourselves is we get the long-term investment to actually better and to allow these locals to basically get that self-actualization. Even secondly, we get a better experience for these locals of quality of life because inflation isn't as exacerbated on our side of the house. And thirdly, we get that cultural erosion aspect that happens on their side of the house severely mitigated. In status quo, they either don't interact with the culture, the tourists, or when they do come into this culture, for example, when they go to Canary Islands, they use their purchasing power, their cultural ignorance to actually poison the places that they're actually living in. And the places that they're simply guests, they're rowdy, they're disrespectful, and exacerbate the demand, for example, sex tourism in Thailand or Indonesia, that severely harms the culture. Thirdly, about tourists, we get them better enjoyment. No longer do they have to have high crowds in, for example, the Louvre, right? They actually get some benefit because it's not as much crowding. For example, even going to pilgrimage in Mecca, when you don't have that overcrowding, you're actually allowed to have a better connection with God. You're allowed to actually better fulfill the obligations of your pilgrimage. When you're not worrying about a stampede, you're not worrying about not being accommodated for it in heat school. You're also alleviating the local and tourist relations and the antagonization that currently exists in status quo that they don't address with their side of the house. When Barcelona citizens are spraying water on me because they don't want me there, that's a severe issue that impedes on my ability to actually engage with the culture or enjoy the benefits of it. And states themselves, we tell you that currently in status quo, companies collapse because of these economic shocks when they don't invest and they're not incentivized to invest in actual industry, such as the culinary industry or manufacturing industry, because they're just told to completely rely on tourism. No matter what happens, our side of the house gets retraining quickly and better, and those political incentives actually account for locals are severely addressed at our side of the house. So proud to propose this motion.
Thank you very much to the previous speaker. Now we'd like to invite the third opposition speaker to close out their half of the debate. Here. Also, please a reminder to the audience, please try to limit your movements as smooth as possible during the speeches of the speakers. Out of respect, thank you very much. Whenever you're ready.
At the very point where they only try to debate on international tourism and not local tourism, they lose this debate because they're unengaged in half of this. They're never proud to oppose. Now, I'll do three things in this debate. Point out strategic flaws on their side of the house. I will analyze this debate on a crash analysis based on the key questions of this debate and give you like a way up of the world. Now, on to strategic flaws. First of all, we have on the issue of clarity, right? They give us hunts such as overdependence and prices, but then they don't give a direct link between. They don't give a very clear link between. They don't give a very clear causal link between overdependence and prices to the number of tourists. What we give responses to this, and which have clear causal links, and they tell you why exactly this issue. So they can't claim this in the debate. Secondly, they also talk about diversification and how that is limited by the high number of tourists. But then they don't recognize clearly how this diversification is any different from the tourism that exists in these major tourist destinations. On engagement, on contradictions, right? Now, a recurring theme throughout the bench is that they claim that major tourist destinations can't affect the whole country, but also talk of overdependence. Which is it then? Are they overdependent, or can they not affect? They cannot claim both. They have to choose one. They lose just by this. And the next thing is they talk about how one of the main speakers literally said existing inequality. This existing inequality then shuts down the argument that they talked about of the price differences that exist as a result of tourism. When this inequality is existing, we have recognized how exactly this inequality, these price issues, these economic issues are already existing and are not as a result of the high number of tourists. Lastly, and most importantly in this debate, is their burden in this debate. In this, as I said to at the beginning, they must account for both local and international tourists. Why is it that they must account for this? As we said, when you significantly limit the number of international tourists, the services become cheaper, the incentive increases, and due to the symmetrical allure, these local tourists will then flood in, and all the harms that they say will still be there. Thus, they have to engage in that, and since they don't, they already lose this debate. Now, on to the questions in this debate. The two key questions in this debate are, does proposition truly solve overpopulation in major tourist destinations? And two, where are stakeholders mostly disenfranchised? Now, on the first issue of does proposition truly solve overpopulation, they talk about the issue of price and economy. Now, two responses to this. First of all, the price differences that exist are linked to the historical the historical issues within this place. We see countries like South Africa, which have a history in apartheid. There's an upper and lower class. These economic differences have always existed for a long time and have nothing to do with tourism. But even if we were to let them have that, they need to understand that prices generally do rise during these seasons. It's not as a result of a high number of tourists, it is just something that happened. They cannot claim the issue of prices and they lose the debate in that regard. But then two, they talk about over-dependence. Now, our response to this is, first of all, it is important to know that these major tourist destinations are cities, right? So, then, essentially, the high number of tourists is a form of diversification of the economy. What do I mean by this? Every country has multiple cities and states, right? A city is dedicated to agriculture, a city is dedicated to tourism, a city is dedicated to fishing. Okay, so they can't claim that this diversification is being hindered by tourism, while these cities are the way that these economies diversify. They lose it big because then all of the harms that they talk about do not, in terms of economy, do not exist because this tourism is actually a form of diversification. And by limiting, we're actually then hindering this diversification they're so passionately pushing for. What do we give you in this debate then? We tell you that first of all, we tell you that as we repeatedly said at first event, local tourism will compensate for the international tourists that are then significantly limited, right? But then two, we also tell you that the high prices that we speak of are as a result of like tourism levies, etc. These levies are reinvested into the economy, not to solve the environmental issues that they talk about, to improve the infrastructure, but then also to help the general economy. The money that is gained from the sales in Arusha are also used to help to develop the roads in Dar es Salaam. This is the first thing they claim on their side of the house. We have shown you how the overpopulation problems that exist are not going to be solved by significantly limiting tourism. In fact, what we are left with is just the harms. Now, where are stakeholders most disenfranchised? And that's an important narrative that is being pushed across the house from the beginning is that this is a controlled, high-density major tourist destination. What does this mean? It means that these major tourist destinations have structures set in place to cater for these tourists. In fact, the Olympics are about to begin in Paris. They just purchased 16,000 beds, have built apartments designated to cater for all these things. If they don't believe us, we also see that South Africa, a developing country, which they cannot claim its house, has hosted the World Cup. The World Cup is a competition that brings that has millions of people flooding into the country. Therefore, major tourist destinations inherently have structures set in place. How do we tell you? How is this the case? We tell you that they have infrastructure and also they have these things planned in their budgets because they have incentive to further increase the number of tourists in the nation. So, if it's controlled high density, what do we get now in the stakeholder analysis? First of all, we see the states, right? How are the states affected? They tell us that. Nothing. They tell us that. They talk on the matter of yes. The way they don't talk about how the state is affected in all this. The state is significantly affected by significant limiting because then they lose the out on the income that they get. If these many of these countries actually do attribute a major of their income to the tourism. So significantly limiting the number will actually hinder them from getting the income that will help them develop these states. And as I said, these are controlled high density situations. You cannot just wander off when you're in a tour. There's structures set up in place. There are rules, codes of conduct, etc., set up in place by these major tourist destinations which ensure these things. So they need to be able to cater to states. Secondly, we have the locals, right? The locals exist in two ways: employees of these organizations and unskilled laborers, right? How do we cater for them, right? We tell you that the businesses that exist in these states, right, need the money for tourism. My mother actually owns a hotel. She's in hospitality. This is dependent on the tourism that they get. Significant limiting will then hinder them. But then we also tell you that the unskilled laborers who exist in smaller honeypots, in smaller destinations, who benefit from the trickle-down tourism, are then harmed by significantly limiting the number of tourists because then we get less of them there. And this disproportionately then harms the smaller tourists because they are less able to deal with it. So, because they need this more, they need this more money more. And so we see that there's a larger effect on that. And the issue of the tourists themselves, they talk about how it ruins the experience for the tourists. But then the issue of this is tourists already know going into these places, they know that it's going to be crowded. That is exactly what they're looking for. They want to win internationally. They want to win internationally. It is part of the experience. It is actually key to the experience itself. They cannot claim that the experience is ruined by these things. Therefore, we have shown you how we not only have the short-term benefits, but we also have the long-term. We also have the long-term benefits. We see that more people are employed. The most disadvantaged are catered for on our side of the house. And we also show you how we fulfill our burden, and we've catered for both local and international tourism. Thus, we win the debate.
Thank you very much to the third op speaker, and now to close out this part of the debate, we'd like to invite the opera block. Here.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to simplify the debate for you. I'm going to show you two things. Why side opposition wins, why side opposition lost. Let's begin with why side opposition has won. A couple of things here. We were able to show you the biggest impacts that targets the most vulnerable people with they significantly limit the number of people. How did we show you? We showed you how the issue of unemployment. That you're going to unemploy a vast majority of people, the locals who can't afford to go online, do work virtually, who don't have a degree and only depend on souvenirs and guiding the locals. They haven't engaged in that. We tell you that significantly limiting them, significantly limit the number of tourists, significantly limit the number of meals that these people can afford. They haven't engaged that. We also showed you in the issue of foreign currency. We showed you the importance of foreign currency, the ability to trade, the ability to go into global international trade, something that they haven't engaged in. So we've shown you that the lack of foreign currency is way worse than having it in the first place. Now, we've also shown you how environment is conserved by showing you the high seasons and low seasons, time to rejuvenate. We've been proven to you when these guys came to Zanzibar and they saw the whole low and high seasons. So we fully engaged on these three things. Ladies and gentlemen, they haven't engaged our case on the issue that our infrastructure is laid to waste. We've shown you that these people invested multi-million dollars to create these hotels, theme parks, saunas, but without more people, these infrastructures go to waste, hence a lack of return of investment, something that they haven't engaged. I want to show you why they lost this debate. First, with their push burdens. Number one, we told you that they need to show a necessity of limiting significantly the number of people. How do they do this? They need to show innate problems as a result of high-density tourism. Number two, we told you that they needed to account local tourism. We told you that if they didn't account for this local tourism, then the whole goal of limiting significantly the number of people fails, because we've shown you that if you do this, locals will come with their families, with their aunties, because prices are gone now, there's no room to enter, and so forth. Something that they haven't emphasized. They claim that they're going to diversify this economy, but we've told you they haven't recognized how they will invest to diversify the economy, especially when we've already told you that these countries geographically and naturally don't have those resources to diversify. I told you Maldives, St. Kitts only have white sandy beaches. So how are you going to diversify the economy into mining? How are you going to diversify the economy into industrialization? So we've told you, by nature, these countries cannot diversify the economy given the presence of natural resources, something that they haven't engaged on. Then they show that they are helping the locals more. And they haven't necessarily shown us how they're helping the locals more. Well, all they're doing is actually unemploying these locals, and they have no access to money and so forth. We've shown you they're not proven to how they protect the locals more than they hurt them, because they claim that they protect and benefit the locals more under diversification, but I've also shown you that they failed to prove us they failed to show us how they diversify, and even if they did, it will be alive because diversification doesn't exist. Ladies and gentlemen, in this debate, you need to understand one thing. We were here to discuss that side proposition needs to significantly limit the number of tourists. They failed to do this because they haven't accounted for local tourists. We tell you they came in and questioned their accommodation, and we told you that Paris receives 50 million per year, and they are yet hosting another Olympic issue. Why? Because they have an infrastructure, they have hotels to accommodate these people. They claim the experience, we tell you, people go to Times Square not to be alone as they wait for the new year, but they go there because they know they'll be with the thousands of people. So we tell you, experience is on our side because there is more people. Finally, in this debate, I honestly do not see what side opposition have done throughout this debate, but I'm sure you can see plenty and plenty more of what we have done. We've been able to show you a couple of things. We've shown you that this major tourist destinations are highly controlled and regulated through tourism ladies, through massive infrastructures, through different departments such as the waste management department, which is the biggest employer in New York and different destinations. But they have no case that we haven't attacked. It's just a case of policy, a case of non-in-depth analysis, and this is why we win this debate. unanimous. Thank you.
Alright, thank you very much. The occupy speaker now goes out of sort of lively and engaging debate as a whole. We'd like to call it proper. Here, here.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Here's why local tourism is not part of the debate. Number one, local tourists are far fewer than international tourists, right? So they don't actually contribute to mass tourism or over tourism as we've already seen, right? And then that's what we're against, right? Then also due to cultural proximity, they're less likely to dilute or even disrespect the culture because we believe the same things that are sanctious to them are the same things that are like of sanctity or of important to the people that they're going to, right? Then number two, they use the local currencies. They don't fit into this whole idea of like purchasing power or like foreign currencies and that being bad. That entire idea we bring, right? Just like hotel or cruise or flight pass would still apply to them, right? So we think this entire burden that they've tried to push about, oh, we have to defend local tourism, is simply not true. We don't think local tourism is necessarily part of this. Now, moving on. Two implications for this. Number one, economy. Number two, vulnerable groups. So for economy in itself, they tell us that because of the fact that we're limiting tourism, we're going to have immediate economic backlash, right? From the first onward, we've already addressed it. We've told that the money that is generated by tourism that already exists, already exists within the economic circle. Everything then still be used to prop up the economy in the short term while we try to develop other alternatives, right? And then we tell you simply that at the point in time where we reach the point of no return, right? At the point in time where degradation happens to the point that these significant areas have been degraded and tourists lose out on like an incentive to go anyways. We think there's already the gradual but permanent death of the tourism industry on their side in the long term, right? We think then any short-term benefits that they bring just do not match up to the long-term benefits, right? At least in our side of the house, we still have this long-term ideal of, okay, yes, we're making less money now, but we can still maximize this money over time, right? We can still continue to sustain these profits for long, and that's the thing, sustainable tourism, right? Then also, this entire idea of like, oh, it props up the economy, right? We told you from the second one, right? That because of the fact that all of the money that is earned is often really invested just back into the tourism sector anyways, right? Whether it be hotels or resorts or theme parks, right? We think then the money that exists is already not benefiting the locals anyways. Okay? What we tell you in our side of the house, under the point of economy, is the idea of diversification, right? This long-term investment into having a more stable system, into having a less volatile system. We tell you the tourism industry in and of itself is incredibly unreliable, and we think then, because of the fact that it's so unreliable and volatile, we think then having a bunch of different like avenues, like say agriculture and manufacturing, water and sector, we think then that is just much more able to absorb shocks, so on and so forth, right? But now on the clash of vulnerable actors, they tell us that unemployment disenfranchises like the worst people, right? We first ask two questions. Number one, why can't the sellers that used to sell trinkets still just continue selling like other things, but now to like say locals, right? And then we also tell you then that like they can still move to other industries. We feel like especially when it comes to low skill jobs, you can still transfer some level of it. Let's say a service job to a manufacturing job or transfer to other service job, right? And then we tell you the vulnerable aspects are incredibly affected here as well. Number one, the housing crisis. This entire idea of Paris that they bring. Paris is pushing out homeless people because of the fact that they want to make more space for like apartments, right? We tell you the problem with Airbnbs and multinational corporations taking part, right? We tell you inflation happens because of the fact that people coming with bigger currencies, because of the fact that tourists are likely to overspend, right? We think at the point in time where you cannot afford to buy bread, at the point in time where you cannot afford to get water, at the point in time where you cannot afford to put a roof over your head, we think then that is where the government fails, and that is where you are actually a vulnerable actor affecting people. And especially now when your culture is disrespected, especially now when the sanctity of everything that you believe in is lost, right? But then even if they don't even on clients and that, right? Even like the tourists that exist on our side of the house, we think they're happy. At the same time, where there's less discontent between tourists and like the locals, we think they're just likely to have a better experience, but also the fact that they can still visit these places down the line, right? Unlike Venice, it's probably going to go away because of the fact that just the fact that we can still have this years down the line. We think that everybody's having our side, also locals and tourists and sites, right?
Alright, thank you very much for that speech. Thank you very much for a very elaborate engaging debate. Please cross out.